Jambalaya then today is a nicely spiced dish. You've got quite a lot of fairly cheap, fairly normal ingredients that you might well have in your cupboards at home, in your fridge at home. So first thing you're going to need is 2 or 3 chicken breasts for this, and I've just chopped these down into quite small pieces so that there's bite-sized pieces, maybe a little bit smaller than that. You're going to need an onion, which I've diced up here, and then you're going to need some other vegetables. You need a pepper sliced. Doesn't really matter of the colour of the pepper, but I also had some courgette that I was just going to use up, half a courgette. You don't have to use that, that's just something I've got that I wanted to add in. So I've got that sliced up as well. There is 75 grams of chorizo in here as well, which I've just chopped down into a fine dice, and then also in there I've added about a tablespoon of Cajun seasoning. Along with that I've got 2 garlic cloves that have gone in there. I've made up some stock. I've got chicken stock cube there, and I've made up to 350 millilitres of boiling water. I happen to have some asparagus in my fridge at home and wanted to use it. I love asparagus, it's just in season at the moment. One way, I don't know, I'm sure you know how to prepare asparagus, but it can be quite tough at the end, quite woody. So if you break the asparagus where it naturally wants to break, the bit that's near the stalk end generally is not great to eat, it's very woody, and the bit above that generally is quite soft to eat. So I'm just going to break that in half again, and then I've got my asparagus ready to add later. You need a tin of tomatoes there as well, and you need 250 grams of long grain rice. This does not work with brown rice or with wild rice. They take much longer to cook and they just don't seem to be done very quickly. So my top tip to you is to use long grain easy cook rice. Could use basmati, but it goes almost too quickly and it just disintegrates a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do is something that's going to be cooked pretty much all on the stove, so you're going to come over and join me on the stove. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in a pan, about a tablespoon of oil into a pan. I'm going to put the heat on, and then I'm just going to lightly cook the chicken. It won't be cooked all the way through, but the chicken will be coming back into the pan later, and so it will finish cooking then. But for this I'm just looking for it to get a little bit of colour, so I am just going to give it 20 or 30 seconds before I put the chicken in. I'll allow you to come round and join me. Now obviously when working with raw chicken, you must make sure that after handling it you wash your hands with soap. That is every time you handle it, whether you're cutting it up and then go on to do something else, or whether you're adding it to the pan. So I need to go wash my hands now, and I need to be aware that this board is dirty and will need washing up. If I've chopped everything up, I've chopped it in this particular order so that I end up chopping the chicken on it last, so that this can then go into the wash. But if you do your chicken at a different point, remember to wash your board. So that is now in the pan. And I'm just stirring this around a little bit. What I'm looking for is just the chicken to go a little bit coloured. So I have got this on quite a high heat. Stick to the edges there. Okay. So at this stage, if you've got any colour on it, brilliant. Because mine went into the pan when it was a little bit cool, it's not got any colour on. I'm going to remove this and put this into a container on the side. Obviously that chicken is not cooked all the way through, we know that, but it will go back into this pan and it will continue to cook in a minute. I'm going to put the onion now into this pan and just let it fry off for 3 to 4 minutes. Because a lot of the oil was used in frying off the chicken, you may find that the onion just needs a teaspoon more oil. And again, I'm just looking for the onion to soften. It may go a little bit brown on the edges, but hopefully not too much. I'll let you rejoin me when I've got the onion 3 or 4 minutes on. So onion's been just sautéing for about 3 or 4 minutes. I've added a teaspoon more oil. It's got a bit more colour on it than I wanted to, so I'm very quickly going to add to this the sliced pepper. It was a whole pepper there. I can just see the seeds I've left on there. It'd be crunchy if I left those in. The courgette, it's about half a courgette just because it was in my fridge. The garlic, the chorizo which has been chopped into cubes, and the Cajun seasoning. I'm just going to give that a stir around. Now ideally the pot that you cook this in will have a lid. I don't have a lid for this one. That'd be quite interesting when it comes to cook. I could either transfer it into a saucepan with a lid, which would work, or I can just add probably some more water to it, as the rice will absorb more water, and the rice will absorb the water, but also some water will evaporate as steam. So just give that 3 or 4 minutes, just to start letting the chorizo cook a little bit and release some of the oil that's in the chorizo. Turn the heat up just a little bit to start that process off. You can already see the lovely colour from the chorizo going onto the courgette and also from the Cajun seasoning. And that's what we want in this. Now this dish is now going to have the rice added to it. Obviously you can give this just a couple more minutes. I don't want to waste your time too much. So give this maybe a couple more minutes, and then at that stage you are going to add your rice, and you need to give the rice a stir. And what we need to do is get any fat that's coming off that chorizo to cover that rice. And very quickly, before it starts burning the rice, you want to add in your tomatoes, and the pan will hiss because it really needs liquid now at this stage. And then to this point, you're then going to add in your stock and your chicken, but I can tell this really needs stock in there, so my stock is my next job before I put the chicken in last. And then in goes my partially cooked chicken. Now as the rest of this dish cooks, so the chicken will finish cooking, so that's okay. Now the logic behind this is that your rice is raw. It's going to cook in the juices in the liquid that you've given it in this pan. So we need to let this simmer so that the rice will absorb the liquid, and then about every 10 minutes you're going to give it a stir, or 5 minutes, give it a stir. After about 20-25 minutes you're going to take a little piece of the rice out and you're going to try it, and it should be cooked through. If it's not cooked through, it needs longer to cook. If you can still see there's liquid on the top like here, then that's okay, the rice can still absorb liquid. However, if the pan looks dry on the top, you're going to need to add a little bit more liquid from the kettle. Now the last ingredient that I have is my asparagus. What I didn't want to do was to cook it too much, so I'm just going to place this in now, and it will simmer down with the rest of the dish now for the final 20-25 minutes. So that's the next stage. You're just going to keep stirring it every 5 minutes. Check and see if it's absorbed water. If it hasn't absorbed water and it's not cooked, that's fine. Just make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. If it's absorbed all the water, add some more from the kettle. If you've got a pan with a lid, now is the time that you want to add the lid onto this. It will create a steam here which will help to cook the rice a bit quicker and will stop the liquid evaporating off as well, so it's worth doing. Thank you. The jambalaya has been cooking for about 10 minutes now, and I've made sure that the heat is hot enough to keep the liquid simmering, because that will help the rice to be able to absorb the liquid. So I've come back after 10 minutes and I stirred it 5 minutes while I was just clearing up and that, and tidying and cleaning up the kitchen. And I can see that the rice is starting to stick to the bottom and that there's not an awful lot of the liquid left. So at this stage, I'm going to take some water from a freshly boiled kettle and just put a little bit more water in. I'm going to unstick any bits that are stuck around the edges. Now, it's generally in those what would be corners that it's going to stick, just at the very bottom there. And then once I've unstuck everything, just going to turn everything around, and then I'll give it another 5 minutes. Now, like I said to you, because mine hasn't got a lid on this pan, it is going to lose more water more quickly before the rice cooks than if you've got a lid on there. So I'm going to come back to this in about 5 more minutes, maybe 10 more minutes, and in 10 minutes rather, and then I'm going to keep going until I taste the rice and the rice is cooked. I know at the moment it's only had 10 minutes, there's no point in checking the rice, it's not cooked. But from about 18 minutes onwards, I'll take a little bit of the rice and check and see if it's cooked. If it's not cooked, like I say, if it's dried out, add more liquid. If it's still got liquid like this, once you've stirred it, you don't need to, just leave it a bit longer to cook. I'll show you then when this dish is finished. Okay. Jambalaya has been cooking for about 30 minutes now, so I've turned the heat off. I've tried a few bits of the rice with on a clean teaspoon, and the rice is now cooked through. At this stage then, you want to give it a stir. You want to make sure that there isn't loads of liquid accumulating at the top still. If there is, then just allow the dish to simmer for a little bit longer with the lid off, and that will allow some of that steam to escape and will allow some of the liquid to evaporate off. You want it to be quite, not dry, but you want it to be not with excess liquid on it. So at this stage then, it's then ready to be served up and eaten for dinner. As I say, this took about half an hour. I didn't have a lid on it. If I had a lid on the pan, it would have cooked a little bit quicker potentially. But as I said right at the very start, different types of rice take different amounts of time to cook. So you need to just keep moving it around every 5 minutes, add more water to it if you need to, if it's absorbed all the water, and taste it from about 15 minutes onwards to see when your rice is cooked. I hope you enjoy the jambalaya. It's usually quite a nice dinner that goes down well with people. Thank you.